Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan says he is still running for Speaker of the House. The Ohio Republican opted not to hold a third round of voting for the speakership today after previously announcing that he would. He briefly spoke with reporters after meeting with the GOP conference.
So I'll just say this: we made the pitch to members on the resolution as a way to lower the temperature and get back to work. We decided that wasn't where we're going to go. I'm still running for Speaker, and I plan to go to the floor and get the votes and win this race. But I want to go talk with a few of my colleagues. Particularly, I want to talk with the 20 individuals who voted against me so that we can move forward and begin to work for the American people.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion was one of the reporters yelling questions there. Nikole, Jordan seems determined to stay in this race and to flip the remaining 20. Why is that?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of been his position for some time now. We did, as you probably saw me kind of walk under that frame. You know, we did continue to follow him after that. And I did ask him if he's planning for a third vote today, and he just would say as soon as possible. You know, as you heard him mention there, he does want to talk to these 20 holdouts. But I also asked him, you know, what more can you tell them? Because a number of them seem pretty dug in. But that really has been Jordan's strategy, to kind of go door to door, member to member, to try to talk to them, resolve their concerns, whatever issues they may have. I do know that this GOP conference meeting was quite heated and tense. So, you know, unclear if there's really going to be the room and the space for that in this moment. But Jordan, as you say, is determined to move forward if and when he can.
And you mentioned those heated discussions. You know, we're not in the room to see exactly what's happening. People are reporting it out. But I also understand there was a bit of a physical dust-up as well. Tell us about that.
Well, I would say more of a verbal dust-up from what we were hearing. You know,
Okay.
There was, you know, basically this meeting was a chance again for kind of members to have their say. Each member got a few minutes to speak. And so apparently when Matt Gaetz came to the mics, former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy told him to sit down. I did ask both of them about exactly what happened, you know, because there was some reporting that McCarthy screamed at Gaetz and that another member, Congressman Mike Bost, may have lunged at Gaetz. Gaetz told me that he wouldn't necessarily describe it as a lunge, but he did say that Bost was angry, and he did seem to suggest that McCarthy was angry and pretty heated as well. Now, when I asked McCarthy about this, he simply said, well, I was talking and I told Gaetz to sit down when he came up. But when I followed up and asked if he actually screamed at Gaetz, McCarthy said, you know, everyone in America should be screaming at Matt Gaetz. You know, he is very frustrated about what has happened here in terms of his ouster. In fact, sometimes he now labels Gaetz and those 8 who helped to boot him from the job as the crazy 8. So, you know, in terms of McCarthy, he did not today say whether he would be willing to take the job again. You know, he continues to try to tamp that down, but he does continue to raise the point that 96% of the Republican conference did back him, and really, but for the small group, you know, those were the only detractors. He also talked more specifically about the path forward, because, as you know, there's also this issue of whether or not Patrick McHenry should be empowered as a temporary speaker on a more permanent basis.
Yeah.
And, you know, that whole proposal appears to be dead, at least for now. You know, McCarthy did talk more specifically about why he set up that position, why it's an important position to have in terms of putting McHenry's name on the list more specifically. But he did stress the importance of continuity of government. And, you know, at this point, it's not clear if there's continued support for that measure. Like I said, right now it seems dead, which is why Jordan is looking to hold this third ballot.
Yeah, I think his passions are a little inflamed. I think he's working through the stages of grief and might be at the anger part.
Did Congressman Bost lunge at you as well?
What's that?
Did Congressman Bost lunge at you as well?
I think he was pretty animated. I don't know if I would describe it as a lunge.
What did he say in the mic?
Oh, I said, oh, man.
Careful, guys. Step. What did you say at the mic, sir? What was your message?
Well, I don't know. I said that I thought that having Speaker Light was a bad idea. I think Republicans ought to stay in our conference until we elect a speaker. I think we got a lot of great folks. I'm supporting Jim Jordan. That'll be how it goes.
How do you have 4% of your conference remove a speaker when 96% are there? This is why we're here. He had no plan afterwards. Now we have Israel at a war, questions whether Congress can act, questions where we'd be able to go to select a new speaker. I mean, it's a difficult situation driven by one person for his own personal beliefs, his own animosity towards me, and his concern about what's inside an ethics complaint that was filed before I was even Speaker.
And Nikole, just in our last few moments, despite Jordan's, enthusiasm for a third round, Kevin McCarthy says he's not interested in the job again because of who he describes as the crazy eight, led by Congressman Gates. Who else in this caucus? And McHenry says he's not interested, the Speaker pro tem. Who else would potentially be able to attract enough votes to become Speaker?
You know, I don't know at this juncture if it's clear, Errol. I mean, I could give you a bunch of names, but, you know, it still comes down to who can clinch 217 votes here. You know, I think Jordan's strategy is similar to McCarthy's in terms of trying to ride this out, seeing if he could build support. You know, we went into this conference meeting with Jordan seeming to try to buy himself more time, you know, that he was going to back this resolution to put McHenry in place temporarily until January, potentially, so that he could try to round up the votes, because a point has often been made that, you know, in McCarthy's case, it took him about 2 months to kind of lock up the nomination. And so, you know, similar time frame, this could potentially give him some additional time. But again, now that there doesn't seem to be enough support for moving forward with McHenry, and that's simply because, A, there are several proposals out there in terms of how long McHenry should be in place. B, some members still have a lot of constitutional questions or issues about doing that. Then that is why it kind of seems to be off the table. So it is a very complicated scenario that we find ourselves in when really, you know, all options are on the table and no options are on the table at the same time.
That's a great phrase, Nikole, and you're also demonstrating how physical a job it is to be a congressional correspondent. You have to duck cameras, you have to run. Thanks for your reporting. Bless you and your shoes. Thank you very much.
Thanks.